Hi, everyone. Welcome to our CX Community of Practice for September, How a Little Empathy Can Improve CX. I'm Candace Thorson, Managing Editor, your facilitator, I guess, today. And while everybody is joining, and we'll give everybody about a minute or so to join. If you want to put in the chat where you're coming from, that would be great. I always love, see where people are joining from. And we also have an icebreaker for you. So it's the beginning of September. School is starting. It's a new season. It's a Monday. So, what are some adjectives that would describe how you're feeling now? So it could be like this very moment. It could be today. It could be in general. Um, I would say, I love summer, and I've mentioned previously that I like gardening. So I'm a little bummed because right now my garden is, sort of petering out, and that kind of makes me sad. Um, but I'm also, excited about certain projects I have going on. So, Springfield's, Honolulu, Georgia, Oakland, Denver. Oh, you feel fresh. That's great. I can't say that I feel fresh. I wouldn't describe that. Um, Springfield, Missouri, Albuquerque. I'm scrolling down. Vancouver, Bethesda, New Orleans, Luz. Happy because pumpkin spice is back. That is true. It is a really, fall because my flowers die out. It's not my favorite season, truthfully, but pumpkin bread and all the pumpkin stuff is great. Looking forward to sweater, sweater weather. Yeah, people love that, like hoodie weather and stuff. Oh, you feel driven. That's great. That's an excellent way to feel on a Monday. A little anxious. A lot of people feel allergic. I like that. That's funny. Um, yeah, a lot of people really like the cool weather. I'm always cold too, so, I'm not looking forward to cold weather either. Grateful, that's true. There's a lot to be grateful for in general. That's always important to remember. So one of the reasons I chose this icebreaker, because the topic today is empathy, is to just kind of get a sense of where people are and to understand people's perspectives right now. Curious, that's great. I think everybody should be kind of curious. Feel a little stressed. That's very common. Um, Relaxed. Oh, that's very good because sometimes when you get back from vacation, when you come back, it's actually some of the most one of your more stressful days. Overwhelmed. So, just as a reminder, this chat is where, you can, as our session goes on, if you want to put in just general comments or whatever on the conversation we're having, this is your opportunity and your place to do it. And it's an open forum. If you want to ask questions of our speaker, that's great. But I just want to introduce, we have a lot to talk about, and we have a really great speaker today. So I just want to kind of get us going. We can, the focus today is getting empathy, making your customer experience more empathetic, and that's important. Empathy is important in all aspects of our lives, but because government's fundamental mission is to serve the public, government has a special responsibility in that regard. And if you look at like synonyms for the word empathy, you come across things like compassion and understanding and insight and warmth and responsiveness and things like that. And that's something that I think we all appreciate. So what's the problem? The challenge is that often in government services, empathy is missing. And it's not at all because people don't have good intentions or don't try or don't care. It's just that empathy, it can be really difficult to put into practice. So we have with us today Greg Kilstrom. He is, and his bio is extremely impressive. So so I'm just going to pull out bits and pieces here. But in general, his career, he's focused on helping organizations connect their visions and their strategies to the actual results. So he's worked in areas like digital experience, customer experience, digital transformation, things like that. Right now, he's with the Agile brand. He's a consultant, advisor, speaker, and coach. And he does, among many other things, he writes for industry publications. He has several best-selling books. He executive produces 4 podcasts, including one that has more than 650 episodes, if that's right. Facilitates workshops on these issues, speaks worldwide, etc. So very impressive bio that just totally scratches the surface. But I just want to thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, looking forward to talking about and agree. It's a really important and often underserved topic. So looking forward to talking about it.
Great. So just, diving into it. So lay the groundwork for us in general. Why is empathy so important to CX, to achieving your CX goals?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on some of the points. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, one, I think it is rewarding just in and of itself to walk a mile in someone else's shoes and try to understand. I mean, we work really hard. We're most employees want to do a good job and want to deliver value and all those things. And so having more empathy for the customer, whoever that customer ends up being, can make not only make that customer's life or experience or whatever a little bit better, but it also actually it enriches our own as employees and working for an organization. It actually enriches our own experience. And so, I mean, to me, I always try to look for the win-win in anything. It's sometimes it's more challenging than others, but you know that that's a big thing. Is just creating value on both sides of the equation from that more emotional and experience standpoint. I think if we get deeper into the numbers, into the data driven part of it as well, is how many people out there have used, let's say, a web application or gone through some process in real life where whoever designed it could never have possibly gone through that process themselves or been in your shoes as the end customer. In other words, it checked literally every single box of the requirements in some PowerPoint or some deck somewhere, but it fulfilled none of the true value that needed to be delivered. And the one of the big disconnects in there's probably others, but one of the big disconnects is empathy and truly understanding what makes that product, service, whatever it is, valuable to the customer. And again, if it's more valuable to the customer, it's going to be more valuable to the organization. I mean, I work with a lot of private sector, public sector, corporations and stuff like that as well. So, a lot of that comes down to ROI and, stock prices and everything like that. But if we're talking public sector, organizations, there still is, we still have budgets, we still have metrics that we're beholden to. To me, empathy, helps deliver value on kind of all sides of the equation.
I think that's a good, you made several good points, and one of them is that it makes you feel good, like as a, as an employee helping somebody out. Because I think we all have the experience of in person work or personal lives, if you help somebody, it can make you, it's rewarding. So to be able to help people. And then I will say, if I didn't get, I joke around, but some of the most valuable government services I get are the text message reminders for certain things because my car registration would never get renewed. My, you name it would never happen. And every time I get those, the DMV loves me. But every time I get those, I think to myself, like they really understand that I'm busy. I want to renew my registration. I want whatever. And I feel like they really understand. They like get me where I am. And it seems like a simple thing, but I think that's a great example of empathy, understanding like what I'm able to do and what I'm not.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where often maybe I'm skipping ahead question wise here, but often when we think about empathy, we think about that person that's sitting across a desk from us, or talking on the phone to us, or something like that. But what you just brought up there is that's empathy in the form of, okay, let me design an experience that is beneficial. I'm the same as you. Like I wouldn't do half of the things in my life if I didn't get a text message or an email and check it at 9 p.m. at night or whenever I'm done working or whatever. But the fact that that was designed for people that don't have time during the day to take a phone call or something is a form of empathy, and that doesn't take a that frontline employee to do that.
Right. Even the things like, like if you have a text message, for instance, and it's like click here to confirm whatever, and boom, you're done. That's awesome. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, you actually transitioning to the next question. So there are, like you said, there are frontline employees, and I think you stereotypically you think of like call centers and people need to be nice on the phone essentially, but it goes beyond that. It affects agency staff that have no real interactions actually directly with people.
Yeah,
So can you talk
yeah.
about that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I deal a lot with software development, app development, things like that in my consulting and advisory work. And so, I always I'm going to butcher the details of the story, but there is the story about the NASA janitor that, when someone asks him what he does, he's like, I help, launch rockets to the moon or whatever. And so I think somebody sitting in a dark room writing code all day that never actually interfaces with a customer still benefits from some kind of empathy with that end person that's going to click the button that they wrote the code for, and stuff. And so, that's one example, but there's lots of examples around that. Is I think in any organization, just like the janitor at NASA, like there is a line between you and that end customer. It may not always feel direct, and I think that's something where I always advise managers and leaders to make it as clear as possible, because I also think that the clearer your relationship is to that end customer, the more you're going to find some pride in some of the work that you deliver, and again have more value in some of the work that you do, because again, we're all no matter what our role is, like there's always a part of our job that feels like it's grunt work, or it's repeatable, or whatever. But to understand that, what, if I don't get this done, then somebody doesn't get XYZ, whatever your agency or whatever your function is. I think to be able to keep that in mind, and again, for managers and leaders to be able to reinforce that in the people that they manage, I think makes it valuable. And then those end customers, when they're frustrated, when they're waiting in line somewhere, when they're waiting on the phone, whatever, when they're waiting for an email or trying to do something that's complicated for them or maybe stressful for them, that little bit of empathy goes so far. And I think we've all benefited from that as end customers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can think, this is talking to somebody in a call center and stuff, but I can think of people when I've called up for one reason or another, and or I don't know where to turn to, whatever, people who've answered the phone, government workers who've been genuinely, really kind, like genuinely kind and nice and wanting to help, even when they don't have the tools they need or the information, they really genuinely do care. And even if they can't get you what you need, it does make a difference
Yeah.
because you feel like somebody, supports you and cares about you. And sometimes that's what you need more than anything else. Um,
Yeah, and I think I think it's about the same amount of effort to be, let's say, curt or rude or whatever, as it is to just be nice. So I mean, some of this may
yeah,
extend beyond the just CX in general. Maybe it's just life advice, but it's like it kind of takes about the same amount of effort. So why not, just be a little nicer, and whether that gets returned or not, that's maybe on that other person. But again, it's if we're trying to save effort by being, by not being helpful, let's just say that, then we're really not saving much.
right. And I'm just looking at the chat about about prescription reminders for family members. I assume that means text messages and stuff. I would have missed my doctor's appointment last Friday if I hadn't gotten a text reminder from my doctor, by the way, but that's not government, but this still is. And designing people experiences for people when you understand their needs really resonates. Um, So as far as like skipping ahead, we talk about data in general. Data is important for everything. So when it comes to CX and empathy, though, what kind of like what can data do for you? What opportunities does it offer, and what kind of limitations are there? And then just to add to this question, which is already big enough, how does AI factor in?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll tackle one piece at a time, maybe. So,
Sure.
I think being solely data driven, I think, can be problematic for those um, that aren't used to looking at the data in certain ways. But I think data is also a path forward to understanding. So, in some of my work, we're able to see when customers are frustrated on a website or a web app, because we can tell they're either like rage clicking on buttons, or they're like clicking around, or there's ways of doing that. And we're able to create frustration scores in some cases to be able to see that. And that's something that is, again, if you were sitting across from them or talking on the phone with them, you would probably be able to pick up on that as a human. But we're able to do that through the data and through, through click trails and stuff like that. And so that's available. That's current. That's not, that's that's been around for a while. Even it's getting better, enhanced by AI, because AI enables us to crunch lots of data and understand things in the aggregate a lot better. And so we can see, okay, there's problematic areas of, again, just to the web experience angle, like there's problematic areas of this website because everybody, or like 80% of the people that are using this site, get frustrated or get stuck here. And so, that's really easy on, if you're a retailer and there's an e-commerce like checkout process, but that could apply anywhere. I mean, going through any
Mm.
process where you have to fill out documentation, anything like that, there's ways to be able to do that. So, I think data, again, we can get kind of steered in the wrong direction by solely looking at numbers. But I think if we tie data to, okay, what's someone experiencing as they're going through this, and then filter the numbers through that lens, I think it can be incredibly valuable. And then, with AI, I think not only can it help us do what I was describing earlier, which is just, understand very large sets of data, but also, AI is being used more and more in customer service and to be able to respond. And, I would say, some organizations have had, varying success with like the chat AI chats and stuff like that. Some of them can be helpful. Some of them are as bad as the phone trees doom loop, I call it, that just get stuck in and can't exit out of. But I think when you do it, when you use them strategically and know, okay, there's certain things, an AI chatbot or a phone tree is never going to be able to help someone solve. Let's solve all the other things and then get the people to the people that can really help. So again, that's you, because I mean, from my perspective, I will do almost anything to not talk with someone unless I really have a problem that needs a lot of explanation. So, just thinking from my own perspective, it's like, okay, get me what I need in 3 clicks of a button or a mouse or whatever. But like when I really have a challenge, like, free up those people to solve those kinds of problems.
Yeah, because when you have a complicated problem, sometimes it really just is easier to talk to somebody.
Right.
And I had a chat. There's a because chatbots can be freakishly real, like realistic. I mean, like actually seem like a person, so it's sort of misleading. Um, but there was one I was dealing with a little while ago, and it was very human-like, but it was in a doom scroll of its own, I think. So it wouldn't give me the answer,
Right.
but then it kept asking how I would rate its, it kept wanting me to review it. And after a
Right.
while, I'm like, you really do not want me to review you. So,
Right.
I mean, it was,
Right.
it was, but so as far as looking at data, I imagine that some of what you can look at is like when pop-up boxes pop up, which yes, are delivering information and stuff, but a lot of people find them annoying. Or when a chat bot pops up and people exit out to get rid of it. I assume that there's analytics on that, obviously, and that can help inform decisions.
Yeah, all of those behaviors. And I think, you bring up a good point with the surveys as well, which, I think surveys can be very helpful, but I think we've got survey fatigue just as a populace. Let's just say, like, I don't know how many.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the survey from the airline the morning after my flight was canceled the night before. What do you think I'm going to say about my experience with the airline? But that aside, we get surveys all the time, and so I think we're there. There's just this fatigue with it. So, what I try to, advise organizations to do is, I think there's some things where a survey is the best and it's the most appropriate and it's kind of the only way you're going to get the information that you need. But those are lagging indicators. So, just for those less familiar with the terminology, it's my feelings about an experience 24 hours after it happened, they're gonna be skewed a little bit, and maybe not a lot, but
Yeah.
they could be very skewed depending on, maybe they're way better because I slept on it and I'm fine and I'm not, frustrated anymore. But I'm a little detached from that experience, even if it's sent right after. There may be overall, like, it was fine, but there was this one part that was just really frustrating, but I just kind of like gloss over it because I got through it. And so, you're missing out on that, and that information that might help others who that bad part of the experience is they anchor and they say it's terrible. So I think matching the lagging indicators like the surveys with leading indicators, which would be, okay, well, what is happening? What are people clicking close the button on, or the rage clicking on a button, or filling things out and searching for things endlessly, or stuff like that. So like you marry the leading and the lagging indicators, and then you actually have a fuller picture of what's going on. And I think that's the most powerful way to look at the CX data.
Yeah. Because there are totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, no, the people who respond it was I was thinking about it the entire time you were talking and then you stopped talking and it totally left my mind. But no, the people who respond to surveys often are people who are really pleased with something or really ticked off about something. Like there's a lot of,
Yeah.
there's a lot of gray area in between because those are the people who are motivated to give surveys. So they are somewhat, misleading because you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
hearing
It's
from them.
yeah, it's something that, I mean, personally, I'm fascinated with that topic of just, how much we can rely on them. But again, I know, things like Net Promoter Score and CSAT and all, those are, there's been plenty of studies done that, have validated, for the most part have validated them. And, so I by no means would say we shouldn't use them, but I think it's even, I've heard the creator of NPS talk several times. It's not the one thing that we pay attention to that rules them all, so to speak, but it's more, it's an indicator, it's a guide to other things, and we've got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. So for agencies that want to incorporate empathy more into their CX processes, what best practices do you offer? Like what things that should they really try and focus on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it maybe may sound obvious to a lot in the profession that have been doing this, but I do think the process of mapping that journey and really walking through that journey is so helpful. And I think it's almost um I think it, as much as it's talked about, I don't know that it's done to the degree that it should be done. And so that means like looking at it not only from the external customer, but the what's going on internally, and then also how we're measuring how that's going. And to have done it 5 years ago or 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, um, I think it needs to be done more often, and really, again, looking at it from this empathetic view of, again, not only do we need to make sure that the data is flowing, or that the buttons are, the widgets are connected or whatever, but that we're really trying to understand what success looks like. And success can't just be that they move to the next part of the process. It needs to be more than that for it to be a valuable experience. So I would definitely start there. I would also say, where possible, there's great organizations out there. I know like USAA and Zappos and others are famous for, like, your first couple weeks at the job, you're actually doing customer service things and listening to what
Oh, that's
customers.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, again, not every agency, not every organization can do that, or anything, but there's probably a version of that that can be done in just about any organization, to just try to go through, again, whatever your job may be. Here's who we're serving, and here's the kind of challenges that they're running into. And again, if nothing else, that may help a manager or a leader map that person's role back to that end customer, and help out a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, you think about like say security, for instance. So your systems have to be secure. There's no question about that. But I feel like as my parents got older, I started to appreciate even more. And they were like technological, all things considered, I suppose. But the idea of like two-factor authentication. Well, what happens if, an older person is locked out of their email account? And so they can't access their email and doesn't use a cell phone. So they can't, and I mean, it's just like there are too many possibilities that they're them, but they can't verify they're them. So there has to be some kind of exception or out or whatever to be able to accommodate people like this, which I think sometimes if you're just stuck in a, we have to be cyber secure, which is non-negotiable, people lose sight of the human element of that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I wish I had a solve for that, but you bring up a great point. I mean,
Yeah, I
I
wish
think there is.
somebody did because my
Right.
brother and I couldn't figure it out.
Well, no, I mean, there's, yeah, and I, I've dealt with that recently with my mom. It's a challenge with someone who, yeah, who doesn't have email and, yet needs
Who's
to
hard
kind
of
of think.
hearing and can't talk to somebody on the phone. So it has hard,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I do think it's that's a question to me of the teams that are so focused on security, a little bit of like, let's think about that from the, because I mean, I find it cumbersome. I understand the need for it, and I'm fully supportive of security or whatever, but I find it cumbersome to do the the authenticator and the
Yeah.
this and the that myself, and I consider myself fairly savvy with this stuff. So so I can only imagine someone that's a bit overwhelmed with technology or has other things that maybe preventing them from doing this as easily as someone else. um yeah, I definitely I think that balancing that security with that is important.
Yeah,
um,
it really is.
I saw the comment about the postal service thing. I think that's really interesting as well. It's the I'll just say that, yeah, the social pressure, you already used the term to, I think, I mean, just very briefly, there's a smiley face or a frowny face staring in front of you, and I would imagine the postal employee is like right there on the other side of it. So how unbiased is the rating going to be? I mean, I guess at maybe at best or at worst you ignore it and just don't do anything of it. But like, how many people are going to sit there and look the person in the eye and give them a frowny face? Like, that just feels mean,
It does.
even if it's intended to be constructive. So I think, to me, this is where leading and lagging indicate, like, the in that case a survey isn't the most appropriate thing. I also have an issue with the bathroom, like, touch screens when you walk out of the bath. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm never going to touch those like smiley face rating things when I walk out of a public
Oh my
bathroom
gosh, I've never
at the
seen
airport.
that.
Yeah, I think Boston Airport I saw it, but anyway, but that sorry, that
No, that
aside,
seems just wrong. I'm sorry.
yeah, I just don't want to, like, anyway, but I think that, this is where, like, the time to serve, there are metrics. They at cash registers at retail stores, they can measure how long it takes someone to check a customer out. Like, if the post office in this case really wanted to understand that, they might look at a metric of like, okay, how long does customer turnover take, or whatever, something like that, versus that. Just, and again, all that really takes is someone walking through, standing in that line, and then wondering if they
Yep.
have the courage to hit the frowny face in front of that person while they're looking. And that person, their performance review is probably dependent on, to some degree, on how many people hit what button, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so now I can't believe, we have 30 minutes for this. I can't believe we have 2 minutes left. But how, um, I have to go to my post office more often. I guess I have to buy stamps or something because I don't know if my post office, which is one of the smallest post offices in the country, I'm convinced. But I don't know if it has that or not, but I'm going to check. But anyway, so if you had to leave everybody with two takeaways today, what would you want them to know?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think if you're a manager or a leader, I think just taking a minute to really instill in the people that you manage what their relationship is to the end customer, and doing your best, again, within reason, like doing your best to help them walk through what that customer might be going through. I think that's huge. It may sound like a small or obvious thing, but you would be very surprised how, like, seldom that happens. The other thing that I would say is just to look at, if you've recently mapped a customer journey or things like that, that's great. Try Start looking at things in terms of those leading and the lagging indicators. Start measuring things that you can measure. There's lots of things that I'm sure we'd all love to measure, but the things that you can see metrics on and you can measure, start looking at those things before you send a survey, and start looking at those kinds of things so that you can map those things both before, during, and and after the customer experience, and start seeing, does that paint a slightly different picture than just post in a survey form.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And not to obsess about the postal service, but it occurred to me, I was remembering like the other Christmas, I was behind a woman who was trying to send a box of Christmas gifts to her family in the UK, and she had not budgeted enough time to do this. So it was going to arrive like in mid-January or something. And she didn't understand how to box it up correctly, and there was me and a bunch of other people behind her, and she had her two daughters with her and stuff, and they were young. And to be truthful, the postal guy was not especially sensitive to her needs. And I felt horrible for her. And at some point, it clicked. Like he understood. And so he was super helpful. He started helping her box things up. He was very kind to her. She calmed down and stuff. And it's like I felt really good for her because he understood. At a certain point, he got it, and that's always stuck with me because I think he really made a difference for her. Not to pick on the postal service, but since we're talking about that, it was a very good experience, I thought.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, and I've had plenty of good experiences at the post office. I know. I feel like
yeah,
they've,
yeah,
but yeah, and I think in to that post office worker, like it wasn't that much um extra effort to help out a little bit versus just kind of watch someone struggle with something. And again, we never know what anyone's going through right now. Maybe
right.
we've had a frustrating experience at the post office, but that person was going through something incredibly difficult or whatever, of course. So like you never know. But again, generally speaking, it's about the same level of effort to just help a little bit and just be empathetic as it is to not. And so why not, right?
Right. Yeah, monitor your own emotions. Yeah, it's like the postal service worker at first looked at her and was like, "Oh gosh, this is creating work for me. This is slowing down the line, blah blah blah." And then I don't want to say he became human, but he stepped outside of himself and he started caring about her.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I really enjoyed. I'm glad that some topics wind up being on a Monday afternoon. They just really they just really seem good for it. And I really enjoy talking about empathy today. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much
Um,
for inviting me. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
so for everybody, our next CXCOP is going to be on Monday, October 6th. I can't believe it's already moving towards October. And we're going to talk about the future of AI and CX. So building on some of the conversation today, talking about AI. If you want to be a COP speaker or you have suggestions for one, just let us know. You can email me. My email is down there in the last bullet, candace.thorson@govloop.com. We do send out a monthly newsletter for the CXCOP, so it's got a lot of helpful resources and interesting stuff, including blog posts and things. So check them out. We also have a LinkedIn group, and we absolutely want you to join that, have colleagues join it, and just, talk about your experiences, thoughts, whatever you want to do. That's great. And if you have thoughts on topics that you'd like us to offer, again, just email me, and that would be awesome. We love to hear from you. So I just wanted to thank all of you for joining us and just say how much we really appreciate everything you do and the work and the commitment you make all the time. So have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Bye.